It's day 2 of the Sea Otter Classic 2022. And as you can see, thanks to my vantage point on the park tool stand, there is a lot of stands here. And there's probably the same amount behind you that way and that way and that way. It's bonkers. So we're going to do our best to get through as many stands as possible and find the latest, the greatest, the weirdest, the most wonderful and the most random e-bike tech possible. And we'll check in with you later on. I'm a little bit different to Jonesy in terms of looking after bikes. So he tends to give his bikes to me or a mechanic at work to look after, whereas obviously I like to work on bikes. If you're the same with your e-bike, don't forget you will need some tools to be able to look after it, whether it's a basic bleed kit to bleed your brakes or dedicated sockets in order to remove that sprocket at the front. Now that is a great tool to have. All you'll need is a regular socket drive at home, whether it's a 1/4 inch or whatever. Get the correct socket, it enables you to work on that yourself. That means avoiding a trip to the bike shop. Yes, bike shops are amazing, but you might not be able to get to one when you need one. So being self-sufficient with some of the jobs on your e-bike is a really good thing. I'm just going to move along here. There's a few other things you should probably see as well. Now, if you're using SRAM brakes or anything with tiny little Torx keys, these are amazing. So SRAM brakes tend to come with that little tiny Torx key in the set, which is brilliant, but it's super easy to lose, and it's not the easiest to use as well. These are like tiny little screwdrivers with knurled aluminium, just a lovely little tool to use. And finally, if you're doing brake tuning, you might have seen some of the Pro World Cup mechanics using similar tools like this, which they fashioned from old bits of disc rotor. Kind of a flattering tool to produce this for the mass market, like I think it's a nod to what the pro mechanics are doing out there. And yeah, well, another little simple tool, all for using with your pads. Obviously that's the exact same size as a disc rotor. Pad space are a bit different. You can actually use that to push the pistons back into place. So it's just constantly refining and adding new tools to the range. If you want to look after your bike, you're going to need some tools. Okay, so I've already been past the Norco stand and we've shown you how rad their bikes are, but this one belongs to one of the crew from EXT Shocks. You might notice it hasn't got an EXT coil shock on there. It's running the new prototype area shock, so it's their air shock, and it's got a whole host of features on it. Essentially, you're going to be able to get the same style ride and custom tunability options you can get on the coil shock in an air configuration. So it's going to suit different bikes and different riders. Now, what you're going to see to start with is the huge air can here, and you'll see 2 valves on there. So they're basically both positive chambers, so it obviously has a negative on the inside. One of them is for controlling your spring rate, so for your body weight on the bike. The other one is to control the ramp up feel of the shock. So depending on your preferences as a rider and the dynamic of how that bike actually rides, you can have it feeling a bit more linear or really quite progressive. So an amazing feature to have with that amount of adjustment straight from the off. And of course you've got your famous low speed compression switch there. So it's your lockout essentially, but it's a separate circuit to the low and high speed compression with the way that they work in the shock. What that means is completely tunable to what you want out of your bike. I think that's awesome, and I think the bike looks rad. Love that wolf graphic on the top tube there. What a sick bike. So when it comes to lubes, you might be thinking a dry lube's a dry lube, a wet lube's a wet lube, but actually there are some subtle differences that do make the e-bike specific ones much better for application. Now, one of the key ingredients in all of the e-bike lubes is boron nitride, so that's something that really comes from motorsports. Now, yes, arguably on a non-e-bike you can put more torque through in shorter bursts, but the point is on an e-bike you're putting more torque through constantly, and essentially it's trying to displace those lubricating particles. Obviously keeping them in place as long as possible is the key to a smooth running drivetrain. So what they've done with these is include those particles and essentially just keeps it in place that much longer. And you've got 3 options in the way you can use the lubes. My preferred choice, using a dropper bottle, so you've got your dry and you've got your wet, but you've also got an all-weather lube, so this one's just a bit more of a generic lubricant in a convenient spray. Now the sprays, they're definitely convenient, but you have to be very mindful when you're using it, because if you overspray, you'll get them near your disc rotors, your rotors are going to be toast, your brake pads, literally, they're not going to recover from that. There are ways to try and get it back, but they'll never be the same. So if you're going to use that, you've got to be careful. Use a shield or even just a rag to keep it away from anywhere where the mist might go. But my advice will always be to use a dropper bottle, because you can get the precise amount per chain link. Now, I know that like Jonesy will probably mock me for saying this, but it is seriously important, and you will get more use out of your bike if you do lube the chain correctly. And don't be tempted to just put chain lube over chain lube. You should be applying it to the cleanest possible chain. It doesn't mean having to fully degrease your chain. Just be sensible about how you do that. Now they've also got one of these, so it's not something I've actually used on my bike. But you know when you spin your crank back, the chainring stays in place. The most efficient way to lube a chain on any bike is by spinning the crank backwards and applying chain lube at the bottom part of the chain. That essentially plugs a hole and enables the crank to butt up against it, which means you can just spin it backwards. So yeah, You could say it's gimmicky, but certainly works, and it's a good idea to save you a bit of a pain in doing it. But seriously, look after your bikes. They're gonna last longer and they're gonna sound better as well. No one likes a creaky old bike. A few weeks ago over on EMBN Tech, Anna and I were having a discussion about OEM equipment. So in case you're not familiar, that means original equipment manufacturer. Now, one of the things that you probably notice is if you're getting a set of Maxxis tyres on a bike, for example, it will have the white logos on there. But the ones that you buy in the store, if you're just buying a set of tyres, will have a yellow logo. So essentially, the white logo ones have been made specifically for a manufacturer to spec on a bike. Now, we're here with Sarex, and what you might not know is these guys make cranks for almost every type of e-bike system out there. Now, they won't have the logos on. You'll see it might have Bafang or it might have any number of things out there. But I think it's really important to acknowledge there's companies like this that specialise in the equipment that you have on your bikes and you're just not totally aware of it. So you've got Shimano EP8 cranks here, you've got just about everything you can see. But I just think the whole world of OEM manufacturing is fascinating and it's a huge scene to be involved with. So just have a little thought when you're riding a bike that the stuff on there might not be made for the intention that you might think or the brand that you might think. Although we live in the UK and have no need for a bike like this with a surfboard carrier on it, I can't think of a bike I've seen here that I've wanted to ride as much. So Jones, if you watch this video, we need to figure out a trip so we can ride a bike with a board on the side. She's using the Bafang hub motor on the back here. I mean, look at this thing. It is super cool with the fat tyres on there. You've got the Juggernaut V tyres. Actually, the Kenta tyres, I lied. But have a look at this prototype. It's over here. This one is the same with a mid-mounted system on it. So you've got a mid-mounted Bafang system on here. You've got a 160mm fork on the front, 140mm travel on the back here. E-fat bike, cargo bike. How sick is that? Although that amazing new Spectral on is clearly one of the better bikes out there, I've got to say the cargo style bikes are next on my hit list as far as e-bikes go. So this is a Benno bike. This one is a Boost 10D Performance Sport. It's running the Gen 3 system on it, so it's a performance line series. It's got a 400 watt-hour battery on it, but just check the spec on the bike. You've got a bench seat on the back, you've got a kid's seat. You can obviously use the bench seat for whatever you want. Chuck your mates on there to go to the pub. I reckon I could probably ride it from the back seat on there, but I love how burly it is compared to a lot of the cargo options that tend to have smaller wheels. This one has the bigger 24s on here. You've got massive tyres on there. You've got full-length mud guards, so you're going to ride it and not get covered in mud. And they will be moving to the smarter system soon on their other model bikes. So check this one out over here. And obviously this is the colour I'd probably go for. So this one's got a Gen 4 with twin batteries on there, 500 watt hour, so 1000 watt hour battery resource there. Huge rack on the back rather than having the carrier for the kids. I'll probably swap that around. Love that front utility rack. Get a crate of beer straight on there. Same thing applies. Adventure spec bike, full-length guards, burly tyres. Absolutely love it. So in the market for something like this. So many uses. Trail builder spec. Be a prime bike to carry all your trail tools out there when you're building good trails. How many times have you heard it looks like a motocross bike? Well, that's kind of what Intense are aiming for in this case with their Taser MX spec model. So the whole point of this is it's identifying with a motocross fraternity, I guess you could say, and this particular spec model is only for sale in motocross dealers. I think this is a really cool concept. So you've got Öhlins, they've got a 38 fork in the front, a TTX shock on the rear, and just the entire look, the Magura brakes, everything on there basically has roots in motocross. I mean, the bike itself, phenomenal looking thing, using that JS tuned rear end and the suspension, the huge girthy down tube on it, it just looks gnarly, doesn't it? But I love the idea they're actually reaching out to a totally different market and just accepting the fact that, yeah, it shares some similarities to motocross bikes. That's fine by me. Everyone knows working on an e-bike can be difficult when it comes to lifting them into work stands, given how heavy they can be. Now, it's well documented the brands like Park make official like mechanical spec electric assisted work stands, but you're talking like their installations for shops and factories and things like that, and they're about 3,000 a piece. This is a stand by Topeak, and this is genius. So this is a pneumatic operation. Essentially, you can put air in it, right? And the cool thing about this, retails for $9.50 here in the States. And check this out, you've got a foot pedal down here, put the foot pedal down, and just lift the bike up to work on it. Now that genuinely is a brilliant piece of tech. Run it nice and low to get the bike in the stand, lift it up to your desired height, work away on your bike, job done. Literally, can't fault that. I think that's an awesome product. As you can probably hear in the background, Kenny below is doing some pretty cool stuff over there, but this is way cooler. Check this out, from UBCO Bikes. You could say it could be the ultimate utility bike. So you can register this for the road use. So it could be taxed and number plates and insurable. 2-wheel drive. Got 2 different motor systems, 2,000 watts for each one. Look at the thing. I can't think of a cooler thing that I'd want to ride to work on. Probably get away with riding it through the woods as well. I reckon that's what Jonesy would do if he had one. Given that we're at the Laguna Seca Raceway, it would be pretty rude of me to not reference a brand as prestigious in motorsport as Pirelli. They've got their Scorpion range of e-mountain bike tyres, and I think you're going to see some really good stuff coming from the brand. Now, they kind of came into the mountain bike world a few years ago now, and they had a fairly basic, stripped-down line of tyres. Dare I say, a little bit questionable in terms of some of the tread designs. They lifted, essentially, some of that Scorpion profile from some of their Moto tyres, and it's probably just a little bit too aggressive for most mountain biking stuff. They've definitely refined things. They've got some different compounds which are extremely soft on some of these tyres, and they've got different casing options available. Like for regular bikes, they've got lighter casings, but more importantly for the eMTBs, got that enduro casing. Tell you what, they look really good tyres, and if you like your motorsport, you like your e-bikes, kind of is quite a fitting fit. Kids and e-bikes, kind of 2 words that don't always go together for a lot of people, but I can only see the benefit there in getting kids to be able to ride up stuff that they might not previously be able to, and get them on the bike for a much longer time. So this Harrow here is a Flightline, it's a 24-inch wheel bike running plus size tyres, suspension fork on the front, and more importantly, in there you've got a 250 watt hour battery, and you've got a 250 watt Bafang hub motor on there. So you've got 8-speed by 1 on the front. This particular one at the moment actually has like a cool little throttle on the bar. It's not confirmed whether that's going to stay on the bike, but I love everything about this, and I love the all black colourway as well. What do you reckon about kids' e-mountain bikes? I reckon they're a winner. And now the Harrow bike Shift IO7. So the IO9 is actually top of the range. It's just out there, a little bit hot. I thought to come in here and look at this. But I've got to say, I think this one looks a little nicer. So in the range, the bikes are actually mullet, so they're running a 29-inch front wheel. This is a size small, the only one in the range that runs 27.5 front and rear, just for the geometry and the size capacity of the bike. Also, the battery on the mediums upwards is a 630 watt hour. This one's got a 504 just because it physically can't fit it into the frame. But hey, it's got a Shimano EPH system on there, running 1x12 transmission, Yari fork up there, super deluxe shock, classic 4-bar design on the rear, and really contemporary geometry. 76.5 degree seat angle, 65 degree head angle. I think this is banging. Absolutely loving the colourways on that. Always used to love following BMX, and see that name on the e-bike. I think that's really cool. Well, there we go. That's the end of day 2 here at Sea Otter Classic, and right behind me, the eMTB cross-country race has just finished, actually. I have no idea who won, but hey-ho. I've still got loads of bikes on the brains from today. That Harrow was insane. Love looking at that. And that EXT shock. Super nice. Let us know what you think about the content of this video down there, and we'll see you in tomorrow's video. Ta-ra.